WPIX11 puts you first. Presented by Jacoby and Myers, New York's injury lawyers. We live here too.
Over the last year, we've partnered with Jacoby and Myers to put your safety first. In our last conversation, we looked at fire safety. We reminded folks to be mindful when using space heaters, avoid overloading electrical outlets, and explained the importance of making a plan if a fire breaks out in your home. Today, we're going to talk pedestrian safety with tips for those walking on the street and those behind the wheel. Joining us now is Andrew Finkelstein, the managing partner from Jacoby and Myers, New York. Good morning, Andrew. Let's jump right in.
Good morning.
You say one of the areas that pose the biggest danger for pedestrians are intersections. Tell us why and what people can do to navigate them safely.
Well, there's so much going on at intersections. We have to always be cautious when approaching an intersection as a driver, but also as a pedestrian. We suddenly become too comfortable with walking and have to realize when we go into an intersection, there are so many distractions for drivers, whether it be crossing traffic, bikes, pedestrians coming from all over the place, that it poses challenges to drivers. And as a pedestrian, we have to be aware of that. Just don't always presume that drivers are paying attention to all the pedestrians, because when pedestrians are struck by cars, quite obviously, terrible things can happen. So whenever approaching intersections, either driving or walking, pay particular attention.
What about people driving while impaired?
Well, driving while impaired presents tremendous challenges in and of itself. It's obviously against the law, and it creates criminal liability and civil liability. That criminal liability is prosecuted by the district attorney and the police department, but also if somebody is struck by a impaired driver, you have civil responsibility that you can pursue, and the distracted or impaired driver has full responsibility for all the harms and damages that they cause. So I always strongly encourage people to hold wrongdoers accountable, particularly if they're driving while impaired, because what it does is it sends a message to other drivers that is just not acceptable in our community.
Next, how does speed factor into the equation when it comes to pedestrian safety?
Very simply, speed kills. The faster somebody's driving, the less likely the pedestrian is likely to survive. So somebody going 50 miles an hour, there's a 0% chance of the survival of a pedestrian or a bicyclist. And that as the speed goes down, the chance of survival increases, but most often it's left with catastrophic injuries. So just because somebody survives, and we don't want anybody to be injured at all, but when it's a high-speed impact with a vehicle, you're going to have catastrophic injuries that create lifetime troubles.
So where in the city do most traffic accidents involving pedestrians happen?
Well, the county that is the highest percentage of crashes right now is Brooklyn. So, for example, in March of 2022, Brooklyn accounted for 2,817 car crashes, with 259 pedestrians injured, and unfortunately 3 members of our community were killed. That compared to Queens, which had about 2,400 crashes, and Bronx 1,500, Manhattan 1,400, and Staten Island with 30. But each of these crashes are always preventable. And they always come about through somebody not paying attention to what they should be doing, which is their entire attention should be on the operation of their car while they're driving, obviously, because we only have a finite amount of attention that we can direct to any one activity. And all of your attention when driving a vehicle should be directed to the driving of the vehicle, because when we divert our attention, that's when crashes happen.
Andrew, before we let you go, tell us about your new book titled I Hope We Never Meet. What is it about, and what do you hope people take away?
Well, I wrote this book for potential clients and all my existing clients, that all of the stories that I've had the opportunity to help people throughout my career has resulted in telling this story from a client's perception. perspective, excuse me. And really what I wanted people to understand is if they are the unfortunate victim of a terrible event, that they do their community well by pursuing the wrongdoer, because there's a deterrence effect when people are engaged in reckless activity that causes harm to other people. The person that's injured, whether it be a wrongful death and the family pursues their action on behalf of their loved one or to themselves, there's a closure component that comes along with it. And it's as important for the individual who's been harmed or who have lost a loved one to hold that wrongdoer accountable, not just for the financial remuneration that they get, but also the emotional closure that they receive, which is oftentimes equally as important. So I just wanted to share some stories of that I've had related to my clients after an event or a tragic event that it seems very dark often at times, but the book is really a story of hope. It's a story of how people who have been faced with really terrible situations have made it through. And I hope that when people read it, they realize that they too can make it through as well.
Thank you so much, Andrew. If you'd like more safety tips when it comes to city living, head over to jmlawyer.com.